Hey there, Hilltop Friends. Today I am canning and I wanted to bring you along. I'm making blueberry preserves and doing water bath canning. I wanted to show you how simple it is and take you along with me to show you that you can do your own water bath canning whether you have a special canner or not, and to show you a little bit of how we make blueberry preserves at our house. Like all the recipes that we do on this channel, you can find this on the blog at hilltopinthevalley.com and print it off there so it can be right in front of you. Let's get started. Now, this is the blueberry preserves I made, and you can actually make these without a canner, which is one of the beauties of water bath canning, that you can do it without a real canner. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But one of the questions that comes up is, what is the difference between jam and preserves? Because I've always kind of used those two words as though they mean the same thing. But they really do have their own meaning. Preserves has to do with preserving fruit in a way that will usually come about with more chunks. Preserves are a form of jam, if you will, but they are going to have chunks in them because you're not necessarily going to blend up all the fruit as you would with jam. So when we make preserves today, it's actually going to be a little bit more simple, which is why I think it's great if you're making jam for the first time to start with preserves, because it knocks out a whole step. You will not have to blend up your fruit at all. So for that reason, making preserves is actually a little bit quicker than making jam. You won't have quite as much cleanup because you're not going to be using like a blender to blend up the fruit. Although if you want it to be more like a jam, you can go ahead and do that. I will say that I do use a potato masher. As I am starting to heat my blueberries up in the pot, I will just keep a potato masher nearby and I will mash those berries as well. To begin with, we're going to put our blueberries and our lemon juice and our sugar and our salt. Yes, I use a little bit of salt in this because salt brings out the flavor, right? It brings out the sweetness, and I do like that in our canned goods too. And we're going to put it into a pot, and then we will turn it on to a low-medium heat to begin to just kind of melt those blueberries down into each other. And I will cook this for about 25 to 35 minutes, maybe 40 minutes if it's not thickening up. But by that time it thickens up. You do need to be around the kitchen, so you're stirring it every so often. And in my case, I like to mash it, like I said. I am okay with having some chunks of fruit, but I do not necessarily like to have like whole blueberries in there. And so I do like to mash it together a little bit. But I'm still going to call it preserves either way. That's okay, right? And the mashing does get easier as your blueberries get hotter and begin to just melt down into each other. It will be a lot easier to mash them also. So you can see after about 30 minutes, this has really begun to thicken. You can see both thickened chunks as well as kind of a liquid that has thickened in it as well. Now, when you get to the end of this thickening process with your jam or preserves, whatever you want to call it, you can totally just take it off of the stove, cool it, and then you could put it into an airtight container and freeze it, and you'd have freezer jam. No canning involved. And that is super simple, and that's also a great gift you could give someone for Christmas, right? But I'm going to do the canning process. I don't have time at this time, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it cool. I will cover it up really well, and then I'll put it in the fridge until I have the time to do my canning. This is okay as long as you do get back to it soon. Okay, so I am now bringing my ready-made preserves out, and I'm going to heat them back up on the stove. And that is something you have to remember, is that if you do cool it off and put it in the fridge, you're going to have to heat it back up again. As those are warming back up, it's time to get your water bath started for the canning process. So to do this, you're going to need your big pot. And as I said, you don't need to have a real canner. You can use a big pot as long as you can put your jars in. I'm using 1/2 pint size jars. As long as you can put those jars into the canner or into your big pot and then fill it up a couple inches over those jars with water, this will work, okay? And the reason why we can do that with these is because the acid content in this fruit is going to help keep it safe from bad bacteria that you don't want in there. This is considered a high acid food, and so water bath canning is safe for it. So I'm going to fill my pot up a few inches with water, and then I am going to begin to heat it up. So I don't want the water to be really hot when I am putting the jars into the canner. You do want it warm, but we don't want to give it like a really big shock, right? So anyways, go ahead and put your jars into the canner, fill it up a couple inches above the jars with water, and then we will turn our heat up and we will start the heating process for the canning. Okay, now that this is boiling, it's come to a rolling boil, I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. I will let that go, and when the timer goes off, I'm going to turn it off and I will let the jars stay in for just about 5 minutes so it can cool down. I don't want to take them out immediately because if I do, it can cause problems because of the big heat switch, and so we let it cool a little bit over about 5 minutes. Then I will take the jars out. I will put them on my towels that I have right back here ready, and then I won't touch them until tomorrow morning. And then when tomorrow morning comes, I'll check them. I'll make sure they sealed correctly, and I'll take off the bands, and then we can put them on the shelves or use them. They will be ready to eat, and just leave them there to cool for about 12 hours. This helps the seal process to actually finish itself because it's not going to completely seal properly unless you leave it alone and let it come down to room temperature by itself. So I usually just leave it for overnight, and then I will go back the next morning and I will check them at that time. The way that you check your cans is by taking the bands off and then holding your cans by the lid at the top and seeing if the lid snaps off or if it stays on. Now I had one can, I had one jar that did not seal correctly, and if this happens, you can use the jar of preserves, just put it into your refrigerator and use it immediately. If this happens later during the year, after your jar has been sitting on a shelf for a while, at that point it is not safe to eat, just toss it out. So with the jam that we just made, I decided to go ahead and make some split-second cookies, which are kind of like jammers. I think there's different names for them, like there's thumbprint cookies that you put jam in. So it's basically a shortbread cookie with jam. I was first gifted these cookies after I gave birth to my first child, and they are so buttery and rich. at that time, I think I was just craving so much fats and so many calories that I ate the whole plate of cookies practically in, I don't know, a day or two. They were gone so fast, and I just loved them, and so I had to get the recipe for them, and I have enjoyed making them ever since. This recipe can be found on the blog, and I will put a link for it below as well. So I went ahead and also made some of these just delicious buttermilk biscuits. I'll put the link for these in the box below, in the description box below this video as well. But you can see, so this is the jar of jam. And there might be like a few chunks in it, but really it comes out pretty smooth, even though we did not blend it. And so this just makes a really good topping for toast, for bread, for cookies, as I just mentioned. It creates a great jam. There's a little chunk right there. Yummy. Thank you for hanging out today and coming along as I make blueberry preserves and can them. I hope this gave you some inspiration. Maybe you'll make some for your family, or maybe you'll make some as a gift for someone soon. And hey, stay tuned, because I will have more recipes and more inspiration as we get into the holiday season soon. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, would you please do so? It will help you be notified when there is a new video that you might want to see. When you subscribe to this channel, it just shows YouTube that this is a channel that people are wanting to see, and so they end up showing it to more people, and more people are able to find them on YouTube. It really helps as we are a growing channel. And so for those of you who are subscribed, I thank you. If you are not, would you please subscribe? And I hope you guys are having a great first week in November, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye. That was a big bite.